To anybody who's been through this, I would just tell them that this could affect you in ways you might not understand, but if you're feeling something, it's legitimate, and there's resources. And that you don't, if you are unhappy, if you are uncomfortable, if you are confused, if you are hurt, you don't have to live like that.
What's up, Healthy Fam? Welcome back and welcome in if you're new. My name is Grace Shockey, and today we're going to be interviewing a working nurse and my friend Alex Cook. And I'm asking her all about her personal growth journey, how she got started in health, in mental health, her experiences never having social media. I think she mentioned she had Facebook for like a second, but it's a very interesting conversation. And then we also dive into some deeper topics like sexual assault, mental health, PTSD, and recovering from those kinds of traumas. So I guess a bit of a trigger warning if that is something that you don't want to hear about or are sensitive to, you might want to click off. But I would encourage you, if you've had something happen to you and you're experiencing PTSD from some event, she gives some really good insight and encouragement. So maybe try and challenge yourself and stick around for that if you can. The interview got a bit long-winded, so I'm going to try and break it apart into a couple of different sections, so look out for the videos. But without further ado, we'll jump right in. All right.
Welcome. This is Alex Cook. She's my neighbor and a nurse practitioner, and we are going to talk about all things health and her journey, and yeah, we're going to get into it. We'll just jump right in. Yay! Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Hi. So, how did you get started in your own personal journey with health? How old were you? What did it look like? Oh, wow.
Probably wasn't until I was in my early 20s, like 23-ish, and I was dating somebody who was a triathlete, and they were really passionate about it, and they wanted me to join them on some of their athletic adventures.
So just so we're all clear, triathlete is like doing the water, like swimming.
Yeah, you
bike,
swim, bike, run.
Okay.
In a variety of distances. So
were they doing like competitions?
Yeah. So he was competing. He had done a few half Ironmans, not like, I don't think he had done full ones. But he wanted me to do one with him, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll give it a try. And I was really good at everything.
Wow, coming from no sports, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I always had like an athletic body type, but I just never really applied it because that's just not how I like spending my time. So I was active. I was really active as a kid. I liked playing with my friends and riding bikes and rollerblading and everything, but I just like never did a sport. So in my early 20s, I started doing that. I think that's probably the first time when I thought that there were things about my body that I wanted to change, where I felt like, I guess I don't look quite like them, and maybe I could lose weight. Or
if I can ask, like, where did that come from? Like, do you know like what kind of place that was coming from?
I remember at one point with my mom looking at pictures together from my trip in Europe and when I was like 20 years old, and my mom made a couple of comments about like my belly kind of showing. I mean, I was always a very curvy girl. I was always very curvy. More than now. And I never really thought about it.
Yeah, you wouldn't either.
Yeah, like I didn't really care what anybody thought, but it wasn't until my mom kind of made that comment that I was like, huh, really? And then
what was the comment? Was it
just kind of like that she could see like my belly hanging like out of my shirt or something in like a position that I was in Vienna or something, and I literally never thought about it until she said that, and I was like, oh.
When you're saying this is actually crazy to me, because you grew up like mostly or completely without social media, right? Was it until high school? I think we talked about that before.
No social media. Facebook wasn't a thing until I was 16, 17 years old, and one of my foreign exchange students from Germany made me a Facebook account so that I could talk to her when she left.
That's it.
That was it. And I deleted it in my early 20s.
So
But that was back in early Facebook years when you couldn't delete anything. So all you could do was inactivate your account.
Oh, interesting.
So in theory, there is still an account under Alex Cook on Facebook, but
Go
you
find
just,
her.
you can't
Just
access
kidding.
it. There have been like some hacking attempts historically with all of like the security breaches in Facebook, and I think in theory, I haven't tried. I hear this is a rumor that you can actually delete things in Facebook now.
Whoa.
That you can actually delete an account since they've gotten sued so many times. But
Makes sense.
back then, in the early years, that was not an option. The best thing that you could do was like inactivate it. So I have an inactive account on there, but that was my only interaction with social media.
So the reason that I brought that up and find it really interesting is because I feel like now, I don't know what you like see or hear or feel in the community, but I feel like young girls are like hyper conscious about their bodies from like 9 or 10 on, maybe early, I don't even know.
Oh, I'm sure, which I would think is extremely weird. That would have completely changed a lot of things for me. Like going through puberty, like I remember I was like I was really tall before I was
She's super tall, you can't tell on camera.
So I was like 5'11", but I didn't grow hips or anything for a while. So I was wearing like a 00 extra long jean, and then all of a sudden the next year I was wearing a size 6.
That's a huge change.
Which is a huge change.
Whoa.
Which requires you to get like all new clothing, but I felt like I was growing out and my hips were developing. Like I never thought that I was getting fat. Like that was never a thought in my mind. I was just like developing, and whenever I'd have those occasional pictures from like a high school dance or something, I never thought I looked bad or ugly.
That's great. Like when I hear that sounds so healthy, I'm like...
But I didn't have a lot of pictures of myself. Like I wasn't scrolling and comparing. Like there was none of that. Like we had, like when I was in high school, most people still didn't have cell phones. People had like a Razor flip phone. That was like the cool thing to have with like your tiny pixelated photograph.
Yeah, exactly.
So iPhones weren't around till I was in college. So it was very, very different. So my health journey kind of, or I guess like my first understanding, my consciousness of how I looked to others was really coming from men that I dated and feedback that I'd get from them, or like them saying I like this and not this and this and not this, and kind of taking that to heart more than I really should have in my younger years.
So you were like kind of piecing together based on this like hodgepodge of feedback.
Kind of, yeah. And then, you know, my mom kind of making a few comments after I took I traveled a lot, and she commenting on my pictures kind of made me think about it. And then I lived in Ecuador for 6 months in college on an exchange as well. I finished my Spanish degree there, and without even really paying attention to it, I probably lost like 25 pounds. Because they eat a very, very different diet. It was, and I lived in a primarily vegetarian household. And
what were you eating
like
day to day?
Breakfast consisted of like rice and avocado, but like, you know, a small portion. Lunch was usually like fish and salad and rice.
Yeah, that's super lean.
More vegetables of sorts. It's Latin American, so it's a little more carb heavy, but it's not Mexican, so there's no tortilla. They don't eat tortilla in Ecuador. A lot of heavy soups because it's high altitude, so it's cold.
Heavy, like high fat kind of.
Not high fat. It's mostly like there's some meat in it, but they just don't have a lot of meat there. There's a lot of chicken, there's a lot of fish, but there's no beef. Unless it's brought in. So I basically like eliminated red meat from my diet the entire time that I lived there, which was something that I lived on in the United States.
Yeah.
Like I'm
that's like our
very much like a European eater. I live on meat and cheese.
Yeah.
Like that's what I want to eat. And there, like you don't eat dairy like that. Milk is in room temperature cartons, which I couldn't palate. I hated.
That's weird.
Yeah, so I didn't eat, and like their cheese is young and tastes different.
Yeah.
So I was basically completely cut dairy, cut all red meat, cut a lot of meat in general, and was eating primarily like fish and vegetables, and I would eat, you know, sweets here and there,
Mm-hmm.
but I was way more active and walking a lot more. So I dropped a lot of weight. Didn't really notice it until my boyfriend came to visit me, and he's like, "Oh my God, you've lost so much weight."
Wow.
And then realized that
So
my clothes were really
interesting.
loose fitting, but like I never looked in the mirror and
It's
thought
so
about
funny to
it.
me. Like most people, I feel like most people are so self-conscious, and you're just
No,
like
just
you're
enough.
doing it.
Yeah, I just didn't notice.
This is like a metaphor for who you are as a person. I feel like you're just like
Extremely aloof.
yeah.
Not
That's just
usually
lit.
paying attention.
That's honestly kind of
Yeah.
beautiful. Like
But this was all when I was like in my really early 20s, and I was just kind of going through life and having these fluctuations and
Mhm.
not really paying attention to it. And then I was with my ex-fiance like at 24, 25, and he was a triathlete, and he was like, "I want you to come with me and do this." So at this time I was already like a little self-conscious. I understood that, you know, as a teenager and in my early adulthood, I was probably a little heavier than I needed to be, but I really wasn't worried about it. I was never dieting.
not obsessed with it.
I was
at
not
all.
obsessed with it at all. I was just aware that my weight would go up and down.
Mhm.
And then I started exercising with him, and I really, really liked it.
Mhm.
I loved cycling, and I thought it was so fun, and I loved the adventure. We would like take all these new trails. We'd stop at fun bars. We would include new people along the way.
So it was like
and
very experiential.
It was
like,
it was a
this
really
is-
good
this is-
experience.
yeah.
I was never super great at the running part. My hips would really hurt after distance running.
Yeah.
But then I was a really fast swimmer, and I would do open water swimming in Lake Michigan. I'm from Chicago. And I loved that. So I started doing triathlons with him, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then just because I liked it so much, I included athletics in my life at that point and started understanding how I felt better when I was more active.
How did that affect you?
I most definitely felt better about myself. I started to actually notice physical changes. I was able to stay awake longer. I've always had issues with my sleep cycle, and my natural circadian rhythm is to sleep all day long. I now work permanent night shift, and I have for 10 years.
Nursing life.
So as a bedside nurse and as a nurse practitioner, I always work night shift, and that's just kind of where I thrive. So when I'm exercising, I can manage my sleep better. I feel better, my mood's happier, but I look forward to it. Like it gives me like something to do that I really like, and it's super fun.
So do you see it as like something that's like a means to an end, or is it more of like
Now that I'm in like my 30s to a degree, but I still do it because I really, really like it, and I like the results of it. So like when we have good weather days, the only thing I want to do is go cycling.
that's so cool.
Like I just get so excited about getting to go ride my bike outside. It's ridiculous.
So you don't see it as like, I feel like one kind of thing that I observe in the world is similar to looking at social media and feeling a bit bad about yourself. You might take that feeling and then use working out as like a way to like
100%.
punish your body, or like, oh, I need to like be a certain way. And it seems like you just kind of evolved into it and started loving the feeling.
Well, my current choice in working out is I do a lot of lifting.
Yeah.
So I started doing triathlons, which is primarily all cardio. And then like 25, 26, I started to teach myself how to weight lift because I wanted to have the more toned look. And I thought that was the way to get it. And I used several YouTube channels to teach myself how to appropriately weight lift. So my cardio, and then I started having problems with my feet, and I had to have like a bunionectomy because I'm an old lady. So I had I'm an old lady. So I had surgery on my foot. I totally couldn't run anymore, but I could still cycle, and that's what I like to do the most. So I started weightlifting and cycling. Cycling is still what I really loved, and then I learned to really love weightlifting. So now I kind of do a combination. On my cardio days, I hate being on the treadmill, the elliptical, anything stationary. So my cardio choices will usually be long walks with my dog, so like 4 or 5 miles. Long hikes when I can, weather permitting. or I'll do like a 50-mile bike ride. Like
Whoa.
I'll plan those.
Yeah.
But if it's
Is that like a
casual,
Saturday or I guess you work like pretty random
yeah,
days,
I don't
so-
like cycling on the weekends here because it's too busy. But
Yeah.
during the week, I'll plan like really long rides. If it's a
Mhm.
casual ride, I'll do like a 30-mile ride that day. But I love it. The endorphins are just flying. But
Wow.
I weight lift like
That's inspiring.
I weight lift like 3 or 4 days a week.
Mhm. So that's like, is that your? Would you say it's your core?
Mhm.
Like that's your main.
Yeah, I try not to miss it. I feel the best. You know, I like how my body looks and feels. I like how I sleep. I have fun doing it. But I most definitely see, you know, I've attended a bajillion different gyms in the last 10 years. I've
Mhm.
lived in a ton of different places. And I've looked around at other girls in the gym. And, you know, when you're dressing up to go work out,
Yeah.
that's a red flag to me.
What does that say to you?
I mean, if you're in full makeup because you just got out of work, I get that.
Yeah.
But if you're
Those 5 o'clock workouts, 5 p.m.
Yes.
workouts hit different.
But if you're there in some ridiculous outfit with your tits hanging out and a full face of makeup and your hair done,
Yeah.
and all you're paying attention to is everyone looking at you,
Mhm.
like you're not here for the right reasons.
Right.
That sounds judgy, but
No, I mean it
You
makes
know,
it makes sense.
and
I think like
wear
coming.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to be there because I'm just really excited to do my workout that day, and I work out with my fiance, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
Mhm.
And he's, you know, he teaches me how to box now. We do different things, but I'm not there to get attention or to look a certain way. I have like workout clothes that are old and gross looking.
Like the old ratty ones with holes in
Yeah,
them.
like I'll have a combination of things that I'm there for the work and I'm not there.
Yeah. Like
the
this is for
attention.
you. Like,
Yeah, it's for me and it's fun, so
Yeah.
I want to do it.
Mhm. I love that perspective. It's not
Mhm.
something that you have to like post on Instagram
Yeah.
necessarily or yeah.
I try.
Really?
People bring like their social media cameras there, you know,
I
when they're
see
filming
those a lot.
themselves.
Yeah.
And like I've learned from people who do that, so I don't.
there are a
wanna
lot
be
of
hypocritical.
educational
There's a lot of
channels
really
that do that.
yeah. There's a lot of really great educational channels who
Mhm.
do that. There's some that are just filming themselves, but then don't provide any instruction or explanation, and I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, well, this isn't helpful to me.
There's a,
You know,
there's
so
a lot.
there's
yeah.
a wide variety of things. So
Yes.
I understand, but I try and like avoid the camera line when I'm at the gym and they're filming themselves.
Makes sense.
But you know,
And
it's
you said
taken-
you don't have Instagram, right?
No, I don't have any
Yeah.
social media now at all.
So you grew up without it, and now you kind of.
I grew up
I have
without
review about
it in my late teenager years, early 20s. I had a Facebook account that I would maybe log into once a month.
Yeah. Wow.
But I hated having alerts on my phone that would make me draw attention to it. So I would always turn all those dumb alerts off. And I was
Mhm.
like, I'm going to choose when I look at you. You can't tell me when to look at you.
Mm.
That's how I always felt about cell
I
phones.
like that. I feel that now, and I feel like a bit with YouTube, and I'm starting to get into TikTok to kind of promote the
Mhm.
YouTube channel, and it's pretty crazy how addicted I become. Like I actually noticed I was literally in the car at a stoplight, and I had like an itch, like an almost actual like visceral itch, like to grab my phone and look at TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is super unhealthy. Like, I feel like we're all kind of walking around like low-key, like addicts, just like itching for our social media. So I think it's fascinating
Yeah.
that you don't have it.
No.
I'd love to
I
hear
can
more
stand
about that
that.
and like what
I understand that.
yeah, it's
Well,
different.
it's not natural to me. But I don't like it. I don't like when my phone is able to tell me when to look at something.
It's like it's training you.
It is, and I've
Almost
always
a little
been super
Pavlov dog
conscious of it, and
situation.
I'm like, no, I don't like that. So then I've turned out being like a very unplugged person.
Which I think, just from knowing you as long as I have, we've known each other about like 6 months or 8 months, like you're very chill. Every time I see you, you're like, yeah, this is who I am, this is where I am. I find you very present.
Oh, that's so nice.
I mean it. Like you're an incredibly present person, which is, I feel like becoming rarer and rarer as we're in this like 6-second attention span. And I feel like this inspires me. I wanna do better at this. And I'm curious how you
It's
find
a choice. I most definitely feel like I'm more reclusive. I've
Mm.
never had huge friend groups. I'm
Mhm.
always someone who just has a few close friends, and then as life has continued, like we all live in different states now.
Mhm.
And I'm reluctant to make new close friends because my standards of a good friendship requires a good amount of effort, and I can
Yeah.
only give so much to so many people.
Mm.
So
You don't want to like start a bunch of willy-nilly.
Yeah. And then it's like I like having time for myself to sleep and exercise and relax. And that's how I handle, you know, anxiety or anything that I'm feeling. And so if I have a million different relationships that I feel like I have to devote X amount of time to, it actually doesn't help me in a lot of ways.
That makes sense. It's a bit like maybe draining or stressful.
Yeah, it's draining to me. I think a lot of human relationships can be really tedious.
Yes.
But that's,
this is a message to all the introverts out there, people that need more time. It's okay, right?
Yeah,
like,
I've just
totally
learned.
okay.
I've learned to embrace it. I think when I was younger, I was like, no, I should be doing this and this and going out and doing all these things and seeing all these people, and I need to be. And now, as in my 30s, I'm like, no, I'm not doing any of that. I look forward to staying home all day.
Little bit of self-care action.
Yeah.
So
don't know if that's great.
This is like all making me really curious, like your views on mental health. That was like definitely something I wanted to ask you about. Just like being a nurse, and I know you work mostly in like intensive care and all that. So I don't know, your history with like the medical field, like what you learned in there, your own personal experience. Like I want you to talk about social media. I want to hear about like your introversion, like all of the things. That's like a huge question, but what would you like to like share with the world, I guess, about your thoughts on mental health? And they don't have to be right or wrong, just like what are your thoughts?
I mean, you can argue
everyone's different
about
we're all
things
different.
that I say. I think everyone's journey is unique and you can't fit them all in the little boxes, and I think
you mean like Instagram boxes?
Instagram boxes, exactly. I'm not someone, I've been very aware of, you know, diagnoses in a way that mental health has been, they've tried to label a lot of things and throw drugs at them, and that's never formally been my journey. So, and I think exercise has helped me a lot, and there's been a lot of trial and error with, you know, my motivation to exercise is really because I want to do it, not because I feel like I have to.
I love that.
And it's been really helpful for my mental health as well, because then I look forward to doing something for me that gives me an endorphin release and self-esteem boost and things like that make me feel a lot better.
Rather than this like thing, like impending,
rather than
do this for my body to look
rather
like.
than something that you feel like you have to do so that you look or act like something that might not be how you feel today. But my journey with mental health, you know, other than treating myself with my own workout and self-care methods, I think I had a lot of anxiety and depression, very undiagnosed. When I was younger, I had
like
a lot of high school age, but not because it was always there. I had a couple of incidents with sexual assault.
Oh wow.
The cases didn't move forward.
Oh my god.
And you know, it
was that in high school?
It involved high school, my 20s, but this is when like they were like half of the rape kits that they would take wouldn't even get processed.
They were not taken seriously. Oh, I'm getting like chills right now.
So like, I mean, there would be a backlog of rape kits that hadn't been actually processed for like a year, and I know that like I think mine was thrown out.
Oh my god.
So nobody gave a crap about all these things, right? And there's no resources available to help you get through it. So as a result of like multiple incidents of sexual assault and abuse, very bad man choices on my part as well, I think I developed, you know, PTSD most definitely, and anxiety, depression that I didn't understand. And then I started having really severe, like, uncontrolled PTSD and, like, disassociation issues in my mid to late 20s that was really interfering with my life. So
how is it affecting you, or, like, coming out?
I'd have really severe nightmares. So these are all, like, kind of textbook PTSD things. You'd have flashbacks, amnesia regarding the events, so you can't really remember what happened. And in my case, like, there are several years of my life where I don't know what happened. I'll have friendships that didn't continue, and I don't remember why. I don't remember how they fell apart. I can't tell you about many years of high school. I just like don't really know what happened. Don't remember them at all.
Because you're just like living in that trauma and like.
Well, your brain just, because you had that trauma, your brain doesn't record it normally.
Oh.
So the events surrounding it, you pack it away. So you don't, in the forefront of your mind, have a good memory of the things that had happened because you weren't capable of processing it at that time. And you're not able to face the feelings and the things that happen to you, and it's too traumatic and you just don't think about it. So it actually affects the way that your memory records.
All across the board. So you end up like packing away, like
just mostly time around those events.
Yeah.
So I had amnesia. I was having really severe nightmares and night terrors and flashbacks, and most definitely affecting my self-esteem. And a friend had PTSD for different reasons, and I was telling her about my really bad nightmares, and she had said to me, she's like, those are PTSD issues, you can be treated for that.
Wow.
And it literally never occurred to me that that's what that was.
Was this in like undergrad or when was
this was when I was living up north and I was maybe like 26, 27.
So you were considerably older. You've been living with this for a while.
So a lot of times PTSD symptoms won't show up for like up to 10 years plus later.
Whoa. Do we know why that is?
Yeah, but I can't tell you the science behind it.
Right. Yeah.
But there's some
research there.
There's a pattern. But and for me it was when I was working and my life was stable and I wasn't distracted with like finishing this degree or getting this job or moving to this place. I wasn't distracted with all of those things, and my mind was actually
able to like
relaxed enough that stuff would start coming out. Right. Dang. And then I didn't know what it was about, and I was having awful symptoms. And I realized that I didn't have to live like that anymore, and it was affecting my relationships and my romantic relationships and my my understanding of what sex is and healthy sex and how I should be treated and how to advocate for myself, and I had no concept of boundaries. And
there was also very little conversation, to your point earlier, like not only surrounding rape but also around like just sexual awareness and health in general. Like we didn't know. I think a lot of people are still in the dark, like myself included. I'm just starting to learn.
Right. Things are so much better than they used to be, but not when I was super young. No.
So that's a lot to like be going through all at once.
Yeah, I mean it really changes your identity, but I realized at one point that I don't have to live like this. And that's when I started seeking help. So I had started going to therapy. I was on individual therapy with a therapist I really liked working with. I saw her for like 2 days a week for at least 2 years, and then I started going to group therapy after my symptoms were controlled enough that I could be in a group setting. So it was
before. Was it even just hard to talk about it? Like you were alone and
and this is like it's a systematic way of working with sexual abuse victims and PTSD. A lot of times when you are just having uncontrolled symptoms, you're not at a place where you're able to unpack it.
Right.
So you have to learn symptom management, and you have to learn how to control yourself and control your emotions, and it's a lot of like cognitive behavioral therapy, a lot of self-soothing. Like you have to learn how to manage your symptoms
just to get to like a baseline.
Yeah, because otherwise if you're going to put you in a room, and a lot of the group, it's not about like all of us talking about our rape. That's never a conversation. You never sit there and talk about it, and in most cases it's about relearning what has happened, like understanding what has happened to you, how it's changed the way that you think about yourself, how it's changed your understanding of emotions and feelings, and how to relearn what healthy relationships are, what healthy boundaries are, and what feelings are. So it's never really about
like
sharing it.
It's like a huge shower, and then like
it is.
Let's clean this stuff off and like.
But it takes a really long time. So I was only allowed to be in like the first group session, and then once I completed level 1, I was allowed to continue to other groups where I learned like emotion identification, boundary formation. Like they were separate groups that I wasn't even allowed to go to until I completed the first one, and I couldn't start going to the first group therapy sessions until I had completed enough individual therapy to not be a complete total disaster in a group setting. So if you have so much anxiety, and if you're so insanely triggered just even by the concept of being at group, and then you can't accept that this is something that you're going to work on and be introspective on. If you're going to have a meltdown in class, even without even talking about it, you just can't be there. So
that's not
you have to get to a point where you can be self-controlled enough that you can even start to unpack what has happened to you. So it's a long journey, and it's really difficult to do, and it's very challenging, and it makes you. But what's hard for me is that going through all those classes and those training and all my therapy and all of that stuff, it really forced you to understand like how much the things that happened to me changed me in bad ways and made me unhealthy.
Yeah.
Because recorrecting how you view yourself is really hard to do. It takes practice doing the right thing, even if it doesn't feel right, for you to start to understand. Later, your emotions will connect with your actions, but at first it just doesn't feel like this is right. Like, I'm not deserving of this. I shouldn't treat myself this way. I'm doing this just because I know it's right. And then later you're like, no, I am worthy of love. I am worthy of respect. I should practice these boundaries. This is right. And then
so it's like a validation
really
and like basically constant validation. Like you are, like you're a human that something like really traumatic happened to, and like that's not who you are.
Well, sexual abuse and rape will make you completely devalue yourself.
Oh my god.
And as a result, you don't treat yourself like a person. So you accept horrible treatment, or you don't treat yourself
post-rape, like long after it happened.
Yeah, because you don't think that you are. In my case, I didn't feel that I was worth being treated as a respecting normal person, and I didn't even understand what like healthy versions of love were anymore. Or like I didn't care about my safety because I didn't care about what happened to my body.
It's like you abandoned yourself after that, like
kind of. There's a lot of dissociation, like where you are mentally and where you are physically are two different things, and you just like let physical things happen to your body and you just stop really caring about it. So learning to treat yourself like a intact person again takes years of training, and a lot of people never get there.
So what would you say to someone who this has happened to, whether it was a month ago or 7 years ago or 40?
There are people in my group therapy sessions who were in their 60s and 70s who suffered from really severe child abuse who still seek therapy throughout their entire lives.
Wow.
And
so like
still find something that they learn from. This is something that can be lifelong for many people. And I think when you go through any kind of a significant trauma, starting out is really hard. Choosing to address it is really, really hard. But you have to accept that your journey is your own. You don't know where you land, but I would anticipate that everyone will need maintenance throughout their lives. It's not like a quick fix.
Right.
So to anybody who's been through this, I would just tell them that this could affect you in ways you might not understand, but if you're feeling something, it's legitimate, and there's resources. And that you don't, if you are unhappy, if you are uncomfortable, if you are confused, if you are hurt, you don't have to live like that. There's resources out there to help you, and it's not just going and talking to someone. It's actually
not like sitting on the therapist's couch and like crying like all the time.
I mean
That's
there's
probably
some of that.
Part of it, but
there's a little bit of that, but it is a lot of like constructive, organized therapy to help you find who you are again. It's not, it's not just talking to somebody and figuring it out. There's actually a method. There's a structural method. It's been very well studied. PTSD is a real thing that, millions of people experience, and there's a lot of methods of working with it, but if you choose to work on it, there's absolutely the option of living a better, more functional life.
That's amazing. I feel like people need to hear that, and like if you're like sitting at home and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I had PTSD, whether it was from like sexual abuse or like trauma, or you're a veteran or whatever it is, like you may not even realize it. So like, could you name a few, I think you already talked a little bit, but could you name a few like signs of PTSD that like just kind of list them out so people might know, like I might
Sure.
have PTSD and I need to look into it.
You know, people love using the words triggered nowadays, but that's
Everyone's triggered.
everyone's triggered.
It might just be Facebook.
Right. When you're actually triggered and you feel
Yeah.
like you can't control what feelings are coming out of you, it could be as something as little as a sound or a noise, a person, a situation that makes you just feel this incomprehensible anxiety and fear that you feel that's out of proportion to the situation and out of your control.
And it's beyond logic, right? Like
Mhm.
we're not gonna like talk ourselves out of this one.
Right, like you don't get the choice to, your
Yeah.
emotions are acting for you.
Mhm.
But really terrible nightmares, anxiety, amnesia regarding the events, those are all part of the whole picture.
Okay. So if anybody's like experiencing that, it's like they just need to reach out to a community. Is there like someone that we can Google? Like,
Oh, absolutely. I don't know what resources are here in our local area because I haven't.
and this is like going to be worldwide, so it's
Unfortunately, due to COVID, all of the resources that I had were completely shut down, and I was no longer able to attend group for the entire duration of COVID. And because a lot of the people that I was doing group therapy with were poorly resourced, there was not enough participation for like online environment.
Yep.
And an online environment really just isn't, people's home lives aren't conducive to attending. So, which is another reason that like COVID really sucked, especially from a mental health standpoint, is that it made your resources incredibly difficult.
Right. And if you were trying to do it online, you're doing it in like a 500 square foot apartment, maybe with your partner or your family.
Or you could be surrounded by the people who are part of the reason that you need to be there,
Yeah.
and you don't really have the privacy to self-reflect in the way that you need. So it makes it extremely challenging. I know I did some therapy over Zoom, and it was absolutely not the same. But there
like
are
something maybe better than nothing, but it's like
I mean
quite the same.
now that restrictions are really loosened up, I think in-person stuff is absolutely an option again.
Yeah.
And you can look within your local area. There's usually community groups that are funded with exterior sources of funding that don't necessarily require your insurance to pay for them.
That's really good to know.
One-on-one
because that might be
therapy,
holding people back.
Yeah, one-on-one therapy does require insurance usually, but a lot of like group settings, not necessarily. So there are options out there. I don't have anything concrete.
Yeah,
to share
and we don't know what city you're in, but if I would say also maybe reach out to a university in your city too, because I feel like a lot of them are at least, if they don't have some program already, they would at least be in touch and have more like a philanthropic, I don't know, program that they could just get you started in. That's probably not every university, but I know there are a few in Nashville, like Trevecca is really good. They offer counseling. I think it's on a like sliding scale basis, but a lot of times they give it for free to people that really need it. So check it out, start Googling, like just do research where you are. I wish I could give you like one link, but yeah, it's definitely, that's a great reminder to people, like get out there and just seek therapy.
And it doesn't, and people, I think it's normal to need support, and what we don't have a lot nowadays, especially with social media and the American lifestyle of constantly working and never resting, is that you never have that time for introspection.
That's interesting.
And this is where people are really supportive of meditation, but I think sure, meditation is important, but just listening to your inner voice, like how do you feel today? Why do you feel that way? What do you need? What have you what do you need differently? What can you do better? How do you feel about yourself? How did you feel about the situation? Like actually listening to your inner voice.
And trusting it, right? Like
trusting it, but you just need to stop and listen for a while rather than every spare minute when you're not talking or working, you're on the phone. Like you're not letting your mind catch up when you're not hearing how you feel. Therapy is a great opportunity to shut off all of the things and then just talk and see where it goes and get an idea for what is it that is going on with you in your life that you need to be in touch with.
That's huge.
So you don't even need to have like a traumatic triggering event to require therapy.
That's a good reminder too.
You just need
We can
someone.
all use it.
I like having an unbiased third party to discuss your life and your feelings with.
Mm-hmm.
Not a friend, not your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who doesn't know
partner.
you. Someone who doesn't know you, where you can be yourself and just express whatever it is you want to express, and you'll be amazed what you find.
Wow. So, well, that's huge. I can also echo that. I've been to therapy on like 3 different occasions. I actually had kind of a traumatic experience happen freshman year of high school, and I was finding myself having trouble focusing in class. I literally couldn't focus on the board, and I think that's maybe a bit of what you were talking about earlier. I don't know the severity of it, like I don't know how to compare that, but I was trying to focus in class. I've always been a really good student, but I looked at the board and it was like blurry. I couldn't really hear the teacher. I just felt my heart pounding like all the time. And I was like, this is not normal. Like this can't be okay. And my parents simultaneously had been trying to get me to go to therapy for their divorce. They got divorced, and thank goodness they were like really conscious about just the fact that is traumatic on its own, and like the family splitting apart. I was 16 and my sister was 18, so it was just a weird time, and we're going through a lot already.
Yeah,
so.
And you're older too.
Yeah, I was older, so I was like used to them being together, and then I was like, all of a sudden my entire view of relationships and family dynamics was like totally ripped apart. And I know divorce is much more normal now, but it still hurts a lot. And it's like, it was so anyway, thank goodness they were like pushing me to go to therapy already, and I just kind of used that as a way to get in and talk about what I had also like gone through that same year. And it helps so much. I think you mentioned cognitive behavioral therapy. Is that the like separate nodules where they do like the left and right hemisphere? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
There's some sort of, somebody put it in the comment section.
There's a lot of different versions of it though.
It's something like, basically what I did was I held like these nodules, and they were like vibrating, and they would pulse like intermittently, and it was supposed to kind of rewire your thinking about a specific event. So the therapist like talks you through it. I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but it was kind of a blur too. I was just trying to get through it, but it helped so much.
I did grounding mechanisms like that, where if you are disassociating, like you can't read the board, you don't feel like you're present in your own body, your anxiety is completely taking you somewhere else. If you have a tactile stimulation,
such
a
as
phrase, even like patting your hands on your lap or something, but something tactile that would pull you back into your body. Or like saying,
even breathing, like
breathing is a common one. Or like I would say like my name, my birthday, and the date. Like I would just stop thinking about whatever I was thinking, and then like repeat like a specific line or a phrase that would just pull me back in. I was often trained to like have something in my pocket to touch if I needed it, like at work, or things like that. And that sounds familiar to it, but that's grounding work. It's not necessarily cognitive behavioral therapy where you're practicing a different method of thinking about something.
That's a really good way to explain it. I feel like cognitive behavioral therapy is such a mouthful and sounds kind of mysterious, but it's basically it's reframing your thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Reframing your thoughts.
You're
around
practicing reframing your thoughts.
Practicing reframing your thoughts.
Differently, yeah.
Very interesting. Wow.
Yeah. There's different stages of doing different things. You can't just dive into it all at once. You have to let your emotions kind of guide you through it.
I love everything that you've said. I think this is really
I
cool.
am by no means an expert.
No, and
I'm not an expert.
We don't have. Yeah, she's not a therapist. But
no, I'm a critical care. I'm a trauma ICU nurse practitioner. I spend most of my time helping very sick patients and dying individuals and guiding their families through that, and that's what I spend most of my time doing. My patients don't usually talk to me.
How interesting is it that you like went through all of that trauma yourself, and now you like work in the trauma?
I always wanted to do trauma. It's probably
that is so funny. When did that start? I'm just curious.
I was 20.
That's so weird.
Yeah,
I mean, it's cool.
I was
but
like,
it's
that's what I want to do.
wow.
I
I don't know that many people that would want to go in that. Like the few times you've told me about like your day after work, I'm like, my God, that sounds like the Marvel movie, like the trauma scene. I don't know. It sounds like a lot.
Yeah. Trauma in the adult, inpatient hospital world, trauma is like car accidents and any kind of a traumatic injury, stabbing, gunshot wounds, all of those things that bring you in to the hospital if you make it. And trauma surgeons are the ones that fix you, and I'm part of their team as a healthcare provider and a nurse practitioner, and I help manage the critically ill in the ICU.
Good work.
Yeah, I used to work at the bedside doing doing trauma work, and now I'm a provider in that role, in that setting.
Okay.
That's with very sick, broken people.
Alex fixes people.
I try.
Thanks, Alex. So, I have a few questions that this has made me think of. I think I'd like to ask you, being a health practitioner, being in the medical field, do you see a need or, let me rephrase that. What do you think mental health looks like for healthcare professionals, mental and physical health? Do you see like them being overworked? This is sort of a leading question. I have thoughts about it clearly,
yes,
but like, what do you think?
Professionals are extraordinarily overworked.
Yeah.
There's really high burnout in a lot of settings, and I come from a nursing background and from bedside nursing, and so a lot of my sympathies are for the nursing community because you're the one person that has to be with the patient always. And especially in the inpatient setting, even in the outpatient setting, physicians and healthcare providers like PAs and nurse practitioners in the clinic, for instance, you get like a good 15, 20 plus minutes with your patient, and then you get to step back, see the next patient, but you get to have that break. And
is it just go? Like I really don't know. I feel like you wouldn't know unless you're in it.
Depends how busy you are, but yeah.
You're just like on your feet, like walking around rooms and.
Yeah, when you're in the inpatient setting, I mean, you're on your feet running around for 12 plus hours.
God, that's crazy.
You get your 30-minute lunch break, maybe.
Yeah.
But you're in people's faces all day long, and you're the one person as a nurse at the bedside. You can't just go away and abandon your patient or make someone else deal with it, or if they're misbehaving or being really mean or nasty to you. Like,
you're the first line of defense.
Well, you're the first line of defense, and you also can't leave. So like anyone else, a physician, your speech therapist or whatever, they can be like, okay, I'm not dealing with them right now. But you're still the nurse's problem.
Wow.
So
big job.
You have to deal with it. So it can be a huge burnout because you're dealing with a whole bunch of different personalities and all of their families and all the healthcare providers who are taking care of them all day long, and you don't get to have a break. You don't really get to step aside for maybe longer than 5 or 10 minutes. And it's incredibly challenging being around a whole bunch of people that you don't necessarily want to hang out with, and you can't just go home whenever you want. And then to go home and have to hang out with more people, for me, is really tough. I need to be alone. And I've learned to do this as an adult, especially after nursing for many years and being a nurse practitioner and guiding a lot of family decisions. I'm informing a lot of families in my setting that their loved one's not going to survive, that we need to talk about withdrawing
You're
care.
the person actually saying it?
Often, yes.
Wow.
I'm like, I'm on this team, I'm taking care of your loved one, they're not going to survive. We need to talk about our options, we need to withdraw care, things like that.
Have you found a way to like dissociate yourself from that personally, emotionally, other than just taking time?
Not really. I just accept that death is a natural part of life and it's inevitable, and I'm doing a disservice by prolonging someone's death if I'm not being honest with their family.
Yeah.
Like keeping people alive on life support for longer than needs to occur just because their family is not accepting the situation is not humane. So, granted, we're not going to withdraw care without consent, but at the same time, we're going to be really forward and honest that this person isn't going to survive. we are the ones keeping them alive,
And it's not going to change.
It's not good for the patient. You know, they could be in pain, they could be uncomfortable, like we're keeping them in this limbo that's not helping them, and I'm doing more good for my patients that being honest that this physical condition that they're in is terrible.
So you
and
do
we
a
need to
lot
let
of
them
direct
go.
confrontation.
All day long. Yes. I most definitely feel like I'm more forward.
You definitely are.
Thanks, Grace.
Like, I'm trying it out myself. You for sure are.
Yay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, that's super interesting. I feel like I think I had one more question, like the mental health category before we moved on. We've talked a little bit about social media. I find it fascinating. I think it'd be weirder if we didn't talk about it a lot than if we did, because we are all like engrossed in it all day long now, especially since the pandemic has hit. TikTok has taken over all of our brains, which I think is not necessarily a bad thing. I actually see a lot of really valuable and interesting and funny content, and I think it can be uplifting and educational and like honestly just point blank entertaining. I think it's a lot cooler than like a network television show sometimes, but there are also downsides to the addictive factors, literally to looking at a screen and not socializing with another human being's eyeballs. Like it's different, right? What are your thoughts as someone that doesn't have it? Like, what do you observe being outside of it?
I mean, it's difficult to say because I've always been outside of it. Like, social media has never been a part of my life.
It wasn't like you ever had to quit cold turkey.
Right.
Like,
so I don't, I've never lived a life where social media was a part of my daily routine. I fully acknowledge that there are certain necessities with social media in regards to business, entrepreneurial opportunities, a lot of industries. If you don't have social media, you just won't survive it.
Okay.
So I understand that it's an absolute necessity depending on the industry that you're in. From a recreational perspective, it's not something that appeals to me, but at the same time, I also feel like I'm a little outside of the loop.
Like with references and like
references
lingo
and stuff, yeah. I don't care about any of that stuff at all, but it's like with
Love it.
movies or shows or news, right? So much of that has left their traditional platforms of network television. Like, I haven't had cable in since I was like 19 years old.
Wow.
Like, because as soon as I left my parents' house, like, I've never bought cable television. I've just had Netflix until there was Hulu, and then there were more things, and now you have all the television that you want on individual subscriptions. But like, I'm not coming home every day and watching the news at 5. Right? And I used to read newspapers. Well, nobody does that anymore. Nobody gets magazines. Everything is moved to a digital platform.
Do you ever read like push notification news on your phone?
No. I have no push notifications unless it's like something super necessary, but I hate push notifications.
And that's because of what you were saying earlier. You don't want the phone
controlling. I don't like my phone telling me what to do. So it's like when I want to know the news, right? But the side part is that, like, because there's no news in the background, there's no organized time or platform where information is being delivered that I even trust anymore. I've kind of just cut all of it out. So I acknowledge that I am at a disadvantage to a degree because I have to seek out information when the time suits me, not necessarily when world events are happening. So, like, for the war going on right now in Ukraine, I will try and seek unbiased news platforms to get information on it.
Do you have any favorites?
I usually use Reuters.
Reuters. I never even heard of that one.
Or Reuters. I'm so sorry.
You're good.
And then Al Jazeera.
I haven't heard of that one either. Interesting. Al Jazeera. I'll try and find them and put them in the description.
And then some BBC.
Okay.
But anything not American.
Yeah.
Or I like watching British or any kind of un-American news about American events.
That's an interesting take.
Because it's it's more unbiased than having any kind of an American news platform feed you American news.
Yeah.
But again, like, I have to take the time to go and seek it out because I don't let things come and enter me. So I will sometimes not be super aware of something unless somebody tells me about it, or I go and try and find it on my own. So I'm at a disadvantage because I'm not connected and I'm not interpreting or sharing information the way that most of the world is anymore. So there are pitfalls to being relatively unplugged.
I would argue though, or maybe agree with you that there are more upsides to it than not, because how much use do you provide by just knowing it and being anxious about the information? Right. Maybe you do.
So most people I don't know what it's like to be totally plugged in, but I can say that I don't feel anxiety about information. The idea of having a news platform where somebody can go and look at me and look up things about me whenever they want really bothers me. And that's probably
you've mentioned
related,
that before.
That's probably related to my history of sexual abuse and like my own sense of privacy. But I really don't like that concept that somebody could just go and like look at my profile or know what I'm doing without my consent. I hate that idea.
That's so interesting.
I really don't like it. It really bothers me. I also don't really care about what anybody else is doing. So I have no interest in going to see that.
Because you mentioned earlier you have a few close like friends
I
that
have
you
a few
actually
close
care
friends,
about.
and if I want to know what they're doing, if I want to share something with them, I call them or I text them directly. But like, I don't access social media platforms to gain information on people. But I,
probably very healthy.
Yeah, and the few years when I had Facebook, and you would just have like a news feed where things people are doing would pop up. There would be like things about people that I didn't get along with, or exes, or whomever would pop up there, and it would make me not feel good, or something, or make me think about people I haven't thought of in a long time, and like not all of those thoughts were like not all of those feelings were good, and it's like I really had no reason to delve into this. You wouldn't unless you said. I would have never.
30 years ago, you would have run into them in the grocery store, and that's the only time you would have.
Exactly. Like I was very happy moving on with my life and my pace and my comfort without having this media platform triggering a whole bunch of like thoughts and feelings that I never really needed to have today. So that's
so strange.
So my reaction to it has been primarily negative, where like I don't like how it controls and triggers my thoughts, or brings up information that like I just really didn't want to know. I just didn't want to know that. I didn't want to know that they're dating now. I didn't want to know what this person thought about my friend. I didn't want to know that these people are having some really weird online argument about politics. I was like, I really didn't want to know any of this, and so I just,
now I do.
It's like my reaction is just to completely shut all of it down. And I live. I'm really happy with where my anxiety is at, which is nearly non-existent, and I live very comfortably choosing what to do and what to learn and things like that. But it's hard for me to comment on it because it's not like I lived it and went back.
Well, and what I was gonna say, what I think of when you say all of this, as someone who is an active social media user, I use Instagram fairly regularly. I would say less than maybe most people, but I'm not sure. I just started on TikTok, and then of course I'm active on YouTube. I see YouTube as just an educational resource. I almost don't view that as a social media platform
YouTube
at all.
I use it as an educational resource as well.
Yes.
I've learned tons of things about like makeup and hair and like exercise and diet. Like, but I like YouTube because I can seek out the information I want to know rather than allowing it to feed it to me. And I turn off banners and notifications from it so that I only go on YouTube when I want to go on YouTube for something.
And you find what you're.
And I find what I'm looking for, but that's just how I am about it. But I think that's great.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think YouTube is an amazing tool. Like if you're just getting started with YouTube, everything exists here. Like anything that you want to talk about or learn more about, there are amazing free resources and creators that are putting new content out every day. And I'm very passionate about the platform, which is why I've like chosen to focus on that. But talking about other social media, to your point, there are a lot of people that rely on it for their business, for their brand. There are real reasons why you can't delete social media because you're in healthcare. You don't have to do it necessarily.
Right.
So
it's not
it
a
makes
part
more
of my
sense.
career choice.
So
Which for me is also necessary. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be in a career that would require me to keep up with social media.
You would probably choose like the total opposite, even if you weren't in healthcare, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd go another way. So it's interesting, and like obviously it's a personal choice, whatever works for you. But what your comment makes me think of, talking about like I didn't want to see that they were dating, like I don't really care about this person, or like seeing this person makes me feel bad. My finger just popped. That makes me feel like I want to unfollow a lot of people. Like honestly, there are a lot of people that advocate for like social media, mental health, and like cleaning up your platform. I really haven't done that yet. There was a time when I was going back to body image, like the beginning of the conversation. I was 17, 18, and Instagram was like at the height of its popularity. This was probably 2014, 2015, 2016. And I was going on there and following all of these influencers and like models, and they're beautiful women, and there's like nothing wrong with them posting photos of themselves, and like literally nothing wrong with that. Like I support it, but at the time I had such a poor self-image. I was like a young impressionable girl, and my body did not look like that at all, and I didn't know how to get there, and I wasn't really like actively trying, but it just made me feel so bad when I would see it. Like I would get off and feel horrible about myself. And it took me like a couple of years, and actually a few influencers who said, you know, you don't have to follow them, right? And I was like whoa. So I ended up like unfollowing everyone that would make me feel bad. But now I've kind of gone to another level where it's like there are people that I followed maybe from high school, or like, you know, exes or things like that, and I still kind of keep in touch with like their family through social media, or, you know, different aspects of it. And I feel like there are levels. Like you can unfollow the models, and then you can unfollow, like if that bothers you, but maybe unfollowing like people that just don't make you feel good when you see their posts, like that's totally okay. I don't know. It's interesting hearing your perspective. It makes me want to make some changes. So,
well, I think you should have some kind of control about the information that's coming to you, especially if it's affecting you in a negative way. I mean, there's also the other. See, for me, the weight of having to take time to interact on social media and read through it is not valuable enough to me to have social media for the purpose of keeping contact with people.
Benefits don't outweigh the cost.
Yeah, which is another just part of my personality and who I am, where I'm also losing the ability to maintain relationships that I could grow through even the little contact on social media just to see what they're doing. So in a way, like, I'm separated. There's an extra degree of separation between me and my out-of-state friends and my family who live all over the place.
Because you can't say like, hey, so you guys went to the beach.
Because I'm the one person who's not on social media, so like I don't know what they're doing, and I didn't know who was with them. So that when we have that next family gathering, they feel like they don't know what's going on with me more so than like my cousins or whatever.
Totally.
Now I just don't personally care, so that's just how
Cheers.
I feel.
Yep. Cheers to not caring.
Yes.
It's okay too. Like we're all living in this world right now, but it's not the way it's always been. And like, I don't know. It's so hard to make like broad comments about an entire like cultural movement, but there are like a lot of aspects that don't really matter.
And I'm accepting of the fact that for some people, having social media to maintain relationships to the level and the quality that you see fit is beneficial to you, and it is worth it to you. I completely accept that. It's just not the choice that I made.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
That's fine. I know, I love hearing about it. Very fresh perspective. I think we're all just like saturated in it right now, so it's very interesting talking to someone that is not. I think that's really cool. Oh my goodness, I have so many things I want to ask you today, but I feel like we're running a bit tight on time. One thing I wanted to talk to you about is we learned your kind of like backstory, your history, and how you like evolved into your exercise and mental health and your diet routine. What would you suggest for someone who has never done that, whether they're like 10 or 15 or 40.
And that's where I'm gonna cut it for today, guys. It was a pretty long interview, so I'm gonna be snipping it into another 35-minute video that I will post in a couple of days or next week, so do look out for that if you wanna see the rest. And if you loved listening to Alex talk, please give me a comment, give this video a thumbs up, and do share it with a friend if you found some value in it. I'm gonna be posting a couple of those resources that we mentioned in the comments section below. Other than that, I hope you guys have a beautiful day and look out for more interviews that I post on the channel. All right, bye.